Ladies and gentlemen, Tilden Hooper is back in the house for the third time. He's one of my very first podcasts. And yeah, we were in Rodeo Blues. It is storage, but it's rodeo storage. That's where we keep all our rigging bags.
I love it. I just remember it's pretty hot. I don't think there was any AC out there.
There's no AC.
Pretty sweaty.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's fun. This weather has been nice the last few days.
There's
no AC in here either.
Yeah. And then we had you and Casey on in the Mirage when we did our NFR podcast.
Yep, that was a fun one. That was good.
Yeah. And then now we're back for number 3.
Yeah, I've been having some pretty heavy hitters on here. I was pretty excited to get the call.
Yeah. Terry Bradshaw was he was the last one. He was pretty funny.
Yeah. I
funny.
haven't watched the podcast yet, but I'm a big fan of his. He seems like a pretty funny guy.
Yeah, and he likes rodeo.
Yeah.
He had sat on Bodacious in a buck and shoot.
I bet Bodacious felt that.
Yeah. Yeah, in the buck and shoot at Fort Worth or something, doing something to promo the rodeo while also there was football going on.
Right.
Anyway.
It's funny how you kind of grow up around this or been around it so long you wouldn't think sitting on a bull would feel like a big deal, and then you see people when they get up there close to them and they're like, oh shit.
Yeah no, that's true. Yeah,
but it is a big, I mean, that's a huge animal. Like it just becomes the norm when you're around it all the time, but you see someone that's not used to it and you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and even in the shoot, because if he makes the wrong call, let me turn your mic.
Yeah.
There we go. If he makes a wrong move in the shoot, something can go wrong. We know how to turn our toes in, but yeah, for somebody like that's never been around it.
I don't know. Bodacious headbutts Terry Bradshaw. He might get the losing end of that deal.
He does have a big old dome. The blonde bomber.
Looks like a big guy.
7 5/8 cowboy hat. We're taking him one. An American.
Yeah,
who you're
of course.
also.
I'm a 7 3/8, so I got a pretty big dome for a little guy.
We like to kick these off with questions from the audience. So,
Awesome.
Not sure. I should have wrote down who in the audience they're from, but they're listeners.
Probably my mom.
Yeah, probably your mom.
I'll be able to tell pretty quick.
How do you look both rich and homeless at the same time?
That was definitely not my mom. But the truth of the matter is, when I was hurt in 2015, I had this landscaping business, and I had a homeless guy that worked for me, and I would pick him up. It's hard to find people to work in the landscaping business, turns out. And Craig was a great guy. He was in his 40s, fell on some hard times, was living behind this gas station. I hired him. I would pick him up for work, and he lived in like a Connex box behind the gas station. And he would come walking out to the truck and be clean shaven and have some hair gel in. And like one morning it dawned on me, like I looked at myself and I looked at him and I'm like, I'm in a friggin' $70,000 pickup right here, and I look more homeless than this guy does. So I don't know. I don't know how I do it. It's something I'm aware of, and it seems to be working out so far. So I'm gonna just keep rolling with it.
What was the trajectory of Craig's life after he left working for you? Did it improve or did he go downhill?
It went downhill. Yeah, it definitely did.
Is that your fault?
As a lot of
Craig's?
them did. No, I think Craig had an addiction, and he was cleaned up whenever I first met him. And
it wasn't an addiction to hair gel, I don't think.
No, I think it probably started with an H or something. But anyway, he great guy, man. Like don't do drugs. Obviously, this guy was a cool dude and had some issues. And anyway, worked for me for a few months, got a little cash, and one day I picked him up, and we didn't make it maybe a block from his house, and he's just freaking out because of something about his dog and something else, and he jumped out of my truck and downtown Fort Worth. I've never seen or heard from him since. I hope he's doing good, Craig. Like, I really enjoyed my time with you. I would have these guys, and myself included, I was working with them. I kind of got some khaki shirts for us to wear. And Craig liked to wear this hot pink T-shirt that said, "This is your girlfriend's favorite shirt." So this band of misfits. We'd be at every discount tire on Fort Worth, maintenance in the lawn, and there stands Craig in this, bright pink T-shirt talking about someone's girlfriend. Craig, this isn't working, man.
Oh, yeah. We all know a Craig, or we know someone that might one day be a Craig.
There's a lot of that out there, yeah.
Question number 2 from the audience. How often do you get mistaken for Dale Brisby?
More than I would ever guess possible. It's always, at first I was like, come on, dude, I'm Tilden Hooper. What do you mean? But now it's kind of like, yeah, man, Dale's a pretty big deal. I do actually know him, I swear. Like, I have met him 3 times on this podcast, man. Like, I swear.
It probably happened more though when the hair was at its longest.
Yeah, man. Like 2020 time, it was hard to get away from. My favorite is when it happens times, but it really pisses him off. He does not sit well with him.
Oh, believe me, I know.
I love it. I totally understand why.
Thanks for listening to Rodeo Time, the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and send this to 5 friends. Ooh, cracking a ranch fuel. If you have 5 friends. Sorry, Donnie. Regardless, I want you guys to subscribe, share this podcast, and also go to rodeotime.com and get yourself one of these new JB Mooney hats, a Rodeo Time hoodie because it's getting a little nippy, and every purchase of a cap, t-shirt, hoodie will enter you to win Daddy's Can-Am. My 2023 Defender, it's 4-door. It's a Lone Star edition, air conditioning. It's got JL audio, got a winch on the front. Go check it out. Go to rodeotime.com. Get entered to win all the way through December 31st. rodeotime.com. Back to questions from the audience. We really should write down who these are from. How many events did you suck at before you started Bareback?
It wasn't just events. It was just everything, right? Like baseball, not great. Football, definitely not great. Soccer, didn't even stick with it. I guess for the whole season I did. Just basically every other sport. And then I came across bareback riding, saw some pictures of my dad doing it when he was younger. Wanted to be a bull rider. Mom wasn't having that. And I basically 100% just convinced her that there's only a few bareback riders in the world. And if I could just stay on a bareback, I could probably get a college scholarship. The rest is history.
That's a good reason to ride bears.
Yeah. And there's no going back to something else. It's not like I'm actually good at anything else.
Except landscaping. Except landscaping. What's it like to see Rocker take your style and just succeed way more with it?
It's it's almost like people mistaking me for Dale Brisby, just on a bigger scale.
The questions from the audience today are just...
I'm not sure if it's an actual audience or I can think of about 3 people that I think may have asked these questions, and they're people that I thought were my friends. I don't know, man. As far as style, I think Rocker definitely has way more of that than I do.
Yeah. So you and Casey Fields said on our podcast back in 2021 that you wouldn't rodeo without each other. What else have you lied to us about?
I think you made all these questions. Oh, man. Yeah. Everybody last year, they were just like, how's Casey doing with his retirement? And I'm like, you mean he quit? Like he just quit and left me out here with all these retards? Like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. But yeah, there was probably a few more lies told. That was one I wasn't totally expecting. I think maybe that same year, I don't know if that was the last year we both made the finals, but in the in the locker room after the 10th round, I think everybody was pretty much expecting us to retire, which I don't know why. I don't have anything else to do. I love this shit, so I'm not going anywhere. But anyway, I stood up on a chair and like got everyone's attention and like kind of introed into like what everybody thought was going to be maybe us saying we weren't going to do this anymore, and had Casey stand up there, and like everybody got real serious, and I was like, hey, just kind of let you guys know we wanted y'all to hear it from us first, but we're going to be back next year to kick y'all's ass again. Anyway, neither of us has set foot in the locker room since then. So that was kind of a funny joke that it was a little backfired a little bit, but hopefully we can get that taken care of.
Hey, you gotta be careful of what you say sometimes. One of my most viral videos is 67-year-old rancher, the very first one. I complained about my back in it and my shoulder. Since that video, I've had 2 back surgeries and 2 shoulder surgeries.
Yeah, you definitely got to watch out what you say.
Yeah. What's it like to act tough on Yellowstone?
That was a stretch for me. I'm not really that tough, so that was some of my best acting. That was an interesting experience. That just kind of came out of nowhere. It was fun.
But what you said was true on there. He said something about like Doc told me I'll never rodeo again, and you said, hell, Jimmy, he's told all of us that.
Yeah, it's true.
And doctors have told you that.
Yeah.
What was it, like 4 NFRs ago?
Yeah, that was the first time a doctor told me that was in 2000 and would have been 2012 probably, I guess. So it's been a while. I've kind of ran past a few of those at this point. But
hey, it's one of the more gentle events in rodeo, so I mean, what do they know?
Yeah. Who knew? But
it was neck injuries, and you're in the bareback riding, so I can see why you would just ignore there.
In his defense, I could see why he thought maybe I wasn't going to be able to continue doing this, but it's been a huge blessing to be able to still do this after everything, with my neck, but. Everybody's dealing with something out there, so not a real big deal.
It took Jimmy, speaking of Yellowstone, 2 horses to be a good bareback rider. Why did it take you so long?
Man, Jimmy obviously had, some really good instruction. Me, I was there. I don't know, man, just natural ability. I've been pretty short on that most of my life, so I've got a pretty strong will, and that's I think what got me over the hump.
All right, last question from the audience, because these guys are ruthless. The citizens of Winnebago are.
Are we just gonna spend an hour making fun of me? Because I'm comfortable doing that too. I need to know.
To be honest, I said, can we choose 2 questions from the audience? And now there's been like 12.
Well, I'm just glad there's still an audience that even wants to ask me questions. So. Even if they're mean.
What did Rump write on the wall in Austin?
Oh, what? I think it was me that wrote on the wall that Rump smells like dump. But
oh, okay. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah,
I just heard there was something.
He
on the
probably
wall.
wrote something too. I thought it
was retaliation for Tilden, or Hooper likes it in the
Pooper. Yeah, that is exactly right. I have a selective memory. I kind of block things out. That guy's hilarious, isn't he?
Yeah, he's pretty funny. He's been on the podcast. I need to have him again.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Last question. How long did it take you to get good at landscaping?
That might have been one of the only things that came natural to me my whole life. Cut the grass, blow it off the concrete. Pretty easy stuff.
Oh, you need to turn that weed eater over like this. Now it's an edger.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward, but I was very surprised by the amount of adults that you could get off of Facebook to come work for you that didn't know how to operate a weed eater or a lawnmower.
Oh, that's funny. So what is your hustle now? Well, are you still doing landscaping? What's your business?
So sold the landscaping deal right before COVID. When I started all that, I really didn't think that I was gonna get to come back in rodeo. Like I was hoping I would, but I was kind of already just hedging my bets and moving forward with some other opportunities that came along. And next thing you know, I did get to come back and ride and continued to get to ride. And, it came down to a point where I was doing both. And I remember like I was in Salt Lake City about to ride in the short round there for 25 or 50,000, whatever it paid. Like, it was a lot of money, and like, I'm taped up. And
What year is this?
This would have been 2020 probably. I mean, this was right before, would have been the summer before COVID, I guess, 2019, I guess. When I don't even remember when all this was. But anyway, I'm just like, I get a phone call, like, taped up, my phone won't stop ringing over on my bag. I answer it. One of my guys is throwing a rock through a window. This guy's lives in his van of all. Had to have a window right then. Lives in the van. Big deal, whatever. We get it all sorted out. And I just, in that moment, I was like, I got to pick. You know, if I'm doing rodeo, I need to do rodeo. If I'm doing this, I need to do that. So went ahead and sold all that. Got out of that deal and just went all in on rodeo.
How'd
again.
you do that day in Salt Lake?
I didn't win first. I think I did all right. Like, I don't recall that really making a big difference. But anyway, long story short, went all in on the rodeo deal for the last several years. And then had to sit out again for a full year last season. And right around that time, right before that, I was introduced to a guy through Susan Maddox, and him and I got to visiting and talking, and he's been operating in the oil and gas industry for 40 years and has some real interest in rodeo and bucking horses and stuff. And that's what we started talking about. And we had lunch a few times, and he kept mentioning this idea and these different regulations that were going to come into play in the oil and gas industry, all surrounding fugitive methane emissions. And he had this idea that you could, you know, detect fugitive methane emissions with a drone based camera, as opposed to walking with like a sniffer and some different stuff, you know. And like, so to me that sounded like a pretty cool idea. I had no knowledge prior of drones or anything like that, other than what they are or whatever. I don't think I'd ever flown one. And so to me, like, it seemed like a pretty big opportunity. The guy is super intelligent. So I wanted to be around him as much as I could, kind of soak up as much as I could from around him. So I just kept asking questions about this deal. And finally one day he's like, hey, look, you know, I'm in my 60s. You know, I think this is a great idea. I need, you know, a fresh set of legs though, if we're gonna do this. So, you know, would you be interested in partnering with me on this deal? And to me, it seemed like a great opportunity, and so I jumped on it. And the timing of it was perfect because I was out all last year, so spent the majority of last year getting some different certifications, researching, trying to figure out which drone we wanted to buy, which camera we wanted to buy, all this different stuff. Did that all last year, got the drone, got the camera, have done some work, and have just since then been soliciting work. All the regulations are so new. A lot of operators are still kind of trying to figure out how it's going to affect them, you know. And but it's cool stuff. I mean, we can fly around a location, we can fly a gathering facility, we can fly some pipelines, we can do different stuff. And the camera's a thermal camera, and when it looks at the asset, if there's a methane leak, it looks like black smoke coming out of there. And there's handheld cameras. There's different ways to do it. We think for most applications, the drone-based camera is a better option because you can move around better. Like, I mean, you're walking around out there with this camcorder, walking around on location. You know, you can only get certain angles, whatever, where I can buzz around with that drone and get it from each side. It makes
brilliant
for better quality images, and it's fun. I think it's a great opportunity. I'm really excited to be involved in it, and we've done a little bit of work, and we're out there soliciting work now. So if you nobody in oil and gas industry, you know, looking for a complete solution to their methane emission problem, HT Drone Solutions.
HT Drone Solutions. Are you the T?
No, I'm the H. Actually, on this deal.
Okay. Yeah, your letter comes first. Hey, will you make sure, listen to the audio, make sure it's all right? Oh, you're listening. Gotcha.
Yeah. So
HT Drone?
HTDroneSolutions.com.
Is there anything else that you guys are able to do with that company, like drone related?
Yeah. So our goal is to become a drone service provider on a few different in a few different industries, right? Like, so we aside from the rig that we have that does the optical gas imaging, the drone that does that, we bought just a drone that has just a thermal camera on it that you can do wildlife counts.
I was about to say, like, that.
I mean, that's really, I want to get into some of that. Like, most of our connections have been in the oil and gas industry, so we've been chasing that a little harder just because my partner
pays better too.
It does, right? And it's our most expensive piece of equipment, so we're out there hustling that deal. And but we have the capability to do. We can do the like I said, the wildlife surveys, different stuff like that. That's real interesting to me. It's
Survey.
so cool. Yeah,
that would be. I could see that one. My mind went to 3 or 4 rednecks that want to check and see where the hogs are.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean we've been on some places looking around. And it's cool. I mean it would be like cheating if you're hunting. Like I mean, because you're up there, you can hit them, see them from forever. But it's pretty cool. Like especially when they're in velvet and stuff, you can see their antlers. Like it's really neat. Like last year I was blown away when we started looking into all this at all the things you can do with a drone, like the different 3D imaging, the different, like you can get a LiDAR unit that does all sorts of mapping and different stuff. And we're eventually wanting to get into that with our other thermal drone. We also have the capability to do what's called a moisture scan on like flat TPO type roofing and stuff. Like they'll get a leak under there and maybe you don't know where it's coming from. You don't just see a big hole up there on the flat roof or whatever, but it's that moisture accumulates up there. And so you go in and right after the sun goes down, after the thermal load gets off of it, you go fly it and that water will still be holding the heat. So if there's water under that TPO roofing, you can see it with the thermal camera.
Dang.
And so that's one thing we'd really like to get into. We haven't had any opportunities yet on that. But dang sure those 3 things would be what we were most suited to do right now. We'd eventually like to get a LiDAR unit and do some stuff with the different mapping and all that. But right now we're chasing the oil and gas deal pretty hard and would love the opportunity to do any kind of wildlife counts or any of the roofing applications. It's really neat. Like I mean, it's cool stuff that I didn't even know was out there until we started looking into it.
So are you actually flying the drones?
Yep. So I went and got my Part 107 FAA certification or whatever to be a commercial drone pilot. I thought you would get like some wings or something to wear around. It was a pretty big letdown on that aspect. I do have a card. It's kind of hard to just whip it out and show people.
Yeah.
I was hoping for some kind of badge, but anyway, so did that. Went and got a couple different certifications through FLIR, doing like different thermography stuff, so I can read the data and stuff a little better. But yeah, I had flown about a $800 drone, and then the next one I flew was about $150,000. Like it was pretty wild. Yeah,
because I was thinking you attach thermal to a drone, then that's probably got to be a really nice drone, and obviously the camera. But I didn't expect a $150,000.
Yeah,
jump.
and it's a majority of that is the camera itself, right? Like the camera weighs about 7 pounds. The OGI camera does. So the drone that carries it it's got 8 motors on it. It's 6 or 8 motors on it. It's a pretty big unit. Like
camera,
it'd fill up this whole table.
Oh, that big.
Yeah, I mean from me to you for sure. Like maybe not that long, but it's as wide as from me to you.
Yeah, because the camera obviously has to have the gimbal, and then it's thermal on top of that. I can't. So
our deal too, like, I mean, one of the things we ran into, and I think a lot of people are probably, if they haven't ran into it yet, they're going to run into it, is like, what do you do with all this data when you go out there and do these surveys, do these inspections and stuff? Like, if you're the oil and gas operator and I go find a leak, like, and I send you all the footage, like what do you do with that? You still have to report to the EPA, you still have to do all these different things. So we were able to, over the last few months, we've partnered with a software company that has a automated solution, end-to-end reporting and inspection and stuff. And so when we go out and do the inspection, we're on an app, we put the findings from the inspection in, it notifies you. End of the day, when we're all said and done, through our partnership with Porosity, we go do the inspection. You get everything through the portal, whatever, and then all your reporting's done for you. You send in a spreadsheet at the end of the year. It automates the whole process. And I mean, I think if you went with a different service company, either they have to have a similar setup, or you have to have a subscription to a software like that, or a license with a software like that. If you use HT Drone Solutions, you have access to the Porosity software through using us as a service company, basically. And so that to me was pretty big. And that's when we made that deal, that's when we have really been out starting to hunt some work, because I feel like we're a for sure one-stop shop in the methane detection industry now.
Just got to find a way to solve as many problems for people as you can, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. It's just, I mean, anytime you're around somebody all the time that's way smarter than you, like my partner, it's like, me of all people, I try to be pretty quiet and listen as much as I can, just kind of soak it all in.
What a cool partnership, though, because the stages of each of your lives, you know, with him being 60 and you're only what, 45?
Yeah, no, in rodeo years I'm close to 60, but
but I'm saying, like, he you know, he doesn't, there's a certain level of, you know, he's probably got the resources to start it. He's got the know-how, and he knew there was a problem to solve, and now he's got an idea. And then you get to be, like you said, the legs. Like, that sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, man. I you know, one question you start getting in rodeo, especially around the time you turn 30, which was a little while back for me. What are you gonna do after rodeo? Like, what are you gonna do after rodeo? And I mean, I came into this deal with my eyes wide open. Like, I didn't come from a rodeo family per se, so it's like, really, no one in my family really thought it was even possible to go out and make a living or a career out of rodeo. You know what I mean? That seemed like a pretty long shot for a guy that probably couldn't even stay on a bareback horse at the time, right? So it's like, I've always known there has to be something after rodeo, and to me, rodeo's always been just something I do, you know, and something I'm very blessed to get to do. But I've also, you know, especially through my injuries over the last 10 years, I've known, you know, the door's going to shut on this sooner than later, and thank God every day that it hasn't shut so far, right? But
do you remember, just real quick, do you remember when it switched for you? Because at 21, you're not thinking that.
Yeah.
But at 31, you're thinking that. So sometime in between there, when did it really, was it 26, 7? Do you remember that time?
You know, it's funny. I don't ever remember, you know, obviously the first few years I was rodeo, and like, that's all it was, just rodeo, have
I'm gonna do
fun,
this forever,
do whatever, you know. But for whatever reason, and Casey, like, we've traveled together our whole career, and the whole time it's always been, you know, like, you know, just your normal amount of rodeo kind of bullshit and going down the road, doing this, talking about whatever you talk about. But also there's always been like, what if we did this? Like, what if we bought a house here and rented it out? Like, what if we, you know, we've been down a laundry list of business opportunities, and like, what could we do with this money we're winning?
But when
right
did
now?
those conversations start?
I mean, I would say pretty soon. Like, I mean, I would say by 23 or so.
Really?
Like, I mean, like, dang sure. I mean, probably after, I mean, about from the beginning, I mean, 21, 22, like, it's always been, and thank God it has been, because I mean, I've always lived on as little as possible of what I'm winning, and taking that money and, you know, bought a house or did this or did that, and made some decisions early on in my life that, you know, when I did get hurt and have to sit out for a year, it made it to where I could do that and still come back and rodeo, you know, and some decisions that I made when I was 21, you know, helped us buy the house and property that we bought 3 years ago. You know what I mean? And so I've always had that mindset. Casey had always had that mindset. I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons we connected pretty early on. But I mean, the whole time I've been rodeoing, there's been something in my mind, you know, like, I can do this, and I also have time to do some other stuff, and I need to be setting myself up for after rodeo. And so that's something I've been working on since I would say 21.
It doesn't surprise me, that being your answer. Like, you and Casey are, you know, I'm not trying to knock rodeo cowboys at all, but you guys seem to be, you know, intellectually just a step ahead of everyone. You know, like, I don't know if that sounds bad.
This is the first compliment I've got since I got here. I'm going to take it.
Well, a lot of those questions that were asked to you from the audience, I might add, they're very similar to the ones we asked Trevor, because it's just Trevor's just sense of humor. You two are, I'm sure you guys get along very well, but like, you guys get it, and your guys' intelligence level is a little higher than the average person, and you get the jokes. But also, I think for the most part, and you might agree with this, a lot of guys at 21, 2, and 3 rodeoing, they're not thinking like that.
No, they're not. And from a competitive standpoint, there's some advantage to that. There's that, because there were years there too where I don't feel like I was like it. Luckily, I started working on, like, I started having those thoughts so early on, because it took some time to find the middle ground there to where I can still come in there and compete at a high level and beat the guy that is only thinking about rodeo all the time and do these other things, right? Like, because there was probably a learning curve there somewhere, a few years in there, where it was like, maybe I was thinking a little bit too much about this and not as much about rodeo, and maybe my riding suffered a little bit or something, because it's one thing about it. Like, I mean, and it's very, very, like, it's front and center in the bareback riding right now, because there's so many young guys that are riding so well, you know what I mean? And being, the top end, the older end of that deal, these guys they're not having the same thoughts I am. They don't have to. Like, I mean, I didn't when I was their age, and that's not bad that they're not, you know
Correct.
what I mean?
I
but
agree.
I think it's kind of a thing too, where, the time that it takes for me to work within my other business, that it takes away from rodeo now, the experience that I have in rodeo and my ability to do what I do in the arena is way more than it was when I was 21. You know what I mean? Like, to get it figured out, and not that I have it figured out, but, like, I mean, I feel as competitive right now as I ever have. Like, I mean, I ended this season and I'm just like, I mean, teeth gritted, I'm ready to rock and roll. Like, I mean, I feel like the experience of riding for the last 16 years, I mean, that's worth something, man. Like, I mean, there's a time when you're 21, and I see it with all these guys, man, and they're really good. A lot of them don't know what the hell they're doing, and the reason I know that is because I didn't. You don't. Like, you do know, but you don't know, right? Like, you're just there's a feel to this deal that it takes a little while to develop, and some guys develop it really fast. I mean, your Rocker Steiners, your Keenan Hayes, like, there's dang sure guys that develop it fast, you know what I mean? Like, and you can tell by the way, like, Keenan rides. Like, Keenan has a pretty dang good feel of what he's doing out there. He's pretty aware of it, because, like, you see Keenan on a horse that really, really bucks, that you need to stay close to. Keenan does that, but you see one jump 4 feet off there and he'll send them past his ears too. Like, to be able to make that switch when you're riding, you have to be pretty aware and have a pretty good feel for what you're doing, and to me, that's something that took a while to develop. I feel like I had a lot of ability, a lot of just excitement, and very little fear of, what would happen if it went wrong. And so that carried me for a little while. And then you start to develop some feel to it, and you get an idea of how to do this. And right now I feel like I'm in a really sweet spot where, like, I know what it takes for me to compete at that level in the arena. I know the time out of my day. I know exactly what I need to do. I know I'm going to a rodeo tomorrow in Texas City, Texas, and I know how to make the switch in my brain to go from, this morning taking phone calls for our drone business to tomorrow riding a bareback, and I can flip that switch and I can go down there and I can knock the shit out of this thing and everything be good, whereas there was a time in my life where it wasn't as easy to do that, so, I mean, there is definitely some advantage to being 21 and only thinking about that, but, I strongly urge any of those younger guys to dang sure be mindful of what you're doing with all this money you're winning, and make it work for you. That way down the road you still have it, and it's working for you, and it can buy you some different opportunities,
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, like you said. Like, you're 21 and you need to be pot committed to this event, and maybe at that point you don't have time to start a side hustle because you need to get that experience under your belt. But at the same time, you also don't need to blow all that money.
Exactly. And I mean, I think it's pretty simple. Like, make smart decisions, don't, buy a house instead of a pickup, you know what I mean? Like a brand new pick, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, it's not rocket science. You know what I mean? Make good decisions with your money and don't just blow it. But that's there's a lot of opportunity out there right now, and I mean, there's a lot of money to be won. There's a lot of things that are different now than whenever I started, and it's cool time to be a rodeo cowboy.
What's an example of something that 21-year-old, let's say he gets a bag of money, and what is something that he could do with that money, in your opinion, that's not going to take him away from rodeo too much, but he'll be glad he did 10 years later?
I think trying to buy a house. Like, I mean, whether like my situation, I started to get a little bit of money, and my mom's like, "Hey, you need to buy a house," and not necessarily because she was trying to kick me out of her house or anything, but like, you need to put this money somewhere else. At that time I had a new pickup, a camper, and I was set up to rodeo. Like, I mean, I didn't really need anything else, but also
Is that the decision you were referring to that you said, I'm not trying to get too personal, but earlier in the podcast you mentioned you made a good decision at 21?
Yeah, the house thing for sure. And I'll explain. Like, I mean, that's one thing I've always done. Like, I want a truck and a camper, a Capri camper that's nice, that I'm comfortable in, that I'm out there on the road, and it makes it a little less like being away from home. I want a pickup that runs good, that's solid, that I know I can depend on, that I'm not worried about breaking down every 5 minutes. But I'm never going to be the guy that goes in there and buys the King Ranch edition or anything like that. Like, it's a tool for me. I don't care what it looks like. I need it to get me from point A to point B. So I'm going to make a reasonable decision on buying that, which, at the time, trucks were half as much as they are, and houses are half as much as they are. But I also was I was competing for half as much money then too. So it's all pretty relevant, and I bought a house, paid it off in a year.
Dang.
Which obviously it wasn't a mansion, but I mean, it was something I was living in. I was renting the other room out to Chandler Bounds. He was starting to go to college there. His portion of the rent basically paid the mortgage on that house. And when he moved out, I moved back to my mom's house. I decided I was gone from home so much, like, it was kind of a silly idea for me to just have this house sitting back there and someone not paying me to live in it. And from that time on, I rented the whole thing out. And 3 years ago, when we bought our place in Granbury, I sold that place, and it had made X amount of money and paid for itself. And then everything that full lump sum was money that I made, and I was able to take and put forward on a newer,
Where was
bigger,
it?
better place. It was in Carthage.
Carthage.
Yeah, right by the college. So I was always able to rent it out to a college kid. I mean, had some pretty good guys in there. Only one renter ever raised any complaints from my property manager / dad, who took care of everything for free while I was gone for all these years. But when Wyatt Denny moved out of there, he left all his shit there. My dad called, and he was like, I like Wyatt, but I've spent about 2 hours hauling shit off from here. I don't think you ought to give him that deposit back. So Wyatt's the only person that ever didn't get his deposit back. But
Sorry, Wyatt.
He didn't seem to mind.
He was like, that's fair.
That's fair enough.
That's fair.
Wyatt was pretty good about the deal. So,
That's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, I just think stuff like that, like, it'd be pretty easy to go and say, instead of buying the tradesman edition Dodge, I'm going to buy the freaking fanciest one they have, and instead take that money and use it as a down payment on something that can go to work for you. Like, I mean, that house sat there. It didn't take any thought from me. You know what I mean? Like, I was pretty fortunate that my dad, was in town and willing to pick up the slack whenever I wasn't there. And my parents are awesome and have always been that way for me. But even if you didn't have that, you could get a property manager. It'd be pretty easy. Not saying, rental is the only option. That's just something that worked pretty good for me from the beginning. And then,
well, and one seems like a reasonable number to manage.
Yeah, no doubt. And it had always been a idea to get more, but the opportunity just never really came along. And so that's another thing. I don't claim to be some sort of genius, but I try not to force things too much. Like, I try to pray about stuff a lot and just kind of look around, keep my eyes open, and if it feels like I'm trying to put a square peg in a round hole, I kind of try to reevaluate,
Well, that seems like such a reasonable, I mean, because you got 10 years, and then even if it is just one property, the reason why I say one is just I can imagine 2 or 3.
Yeah, it could become a job.
That would be that could be a headache.
Yeah.
Now you're back to the Salt Lake conversation where it's like you're about to ride and 2 out of 3 houses are vacant for whatever reason, but you can handle one, especially if it's paid off. But I would imagine the largest expense, Lord willing, when you get done rodeoing is like, all right, now I've got to go somewhere to live. And if you have a nest egg waiting on you that you can now liquidate that and then be set up to, because then all you got anyway. It sounds like such a good plan.
Yeah, and I say that was the only house. I had another house there in Fort Worth that we lived in for several years before we moved to Granbury, and just, I mean, any kind of big extra chunks of money I ever get or win or whatever, I try to find something else to do with them. I've been working with a financial advisor since 2015, and so I just, anytime I get a large sum of money, I take it to Taylor. He kind of has an idea of what's good to do with it, and that's what I've always done, and just tried to live on as little as possible. And definitely was easier 3 kids ago, but here we are, and life's good. God's good.
It's neat that you have like kind of a line though. It's like you're going to live on as little as possible, but for instance, what it would be like, out there almost to Reno and your truck break down, or just, you got to be in Cheyenne for how many days and you want a great place to sleep.
Yep.
So like you've got that line drawn in the sand where it's like, I'm going to be frugal, but then to be comfortable on the road, if I am going to perform this in this event, I want to have these. That sounds like a reasonable
man. That's
trade-off.
Something that from the beginning, and this is something that Casey and I always, agreed on from the beginning too. And I'm sure it's something he learned from his dad. I think it was in one of Ty Murray's books I read whenever I was first getting interested in this. I think he mentioned something like that, like he seeing guys cram 15 people into a car and eat crappy food or whatever. He's like, man, we're gonna stay at a hotel, we're gonna eat a steak, we're gonna do these things to kind of take care of ourselves that make it to where this isn't quite as hard, if we have them. I mean, everything's within reason, right? Like, I mean, I've been to a lot of rodeos with 15 people crammed into a car and 8 cheeses. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But like, I mean, as you get better and hold yourself to a higher standard and these different things, like, I mean, I think it's important to take good care of yourself and to make sure what you're doing out there on the road reflects where you want to go, basically. You know what I mean? So it's like from the beginning, like, I mean, and we're probably a lot more spoiled now than we were, but I mean, you give Casey and I, or really any of the guys I've rodeoed with, the choice between, do we want to get this $60 Motel 6 that we all might catch some sort of disease from staying in, or you want to spend $120 and go stay over here at the Hampton and there's a hot tub in there and big fluffy beds. Like, I mean, we're going Hampton every time. Like, and it's always been that way. And, as far as my vehicles and stuff, I'm not a very mechanically inclined guy. So like some guys, like if you can take a little more of a chance, right? Like your truck breaks down out there. If you're capable of fixing it yourself, it's not as big of a deal as if you're not. And I'm not necessarily. So it's like, I've always had to kind of, not buy the crappiest vehicle, maybe the next step up, something that I'm confident's not going to break down on me. I think get yourself set up to rodeo in a way that is the way you need to be doing it, and then start looking for other stuff to do with that money.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you heard me mention Ranch Fuel earlier. Right now, use code Dale on ranchfuel.com and get 15% off your order. I think they're also doing free shipping. You'll have to check, but go to ranchfuel.com and use code Dale, D-A-L-E. Also like to thank our other sponsors. We've got Rock and Roll Denim. Thank you for those reflex. Woo! American Hats, Total Feeds, Can-Am Side-by-Sides. Last but not least, Mountain Op Supplement. Get you a Venture bar, give you a little boost of energy for the day. Now back to Tilden. There's a lot of similarities between like the way you talk and the way Trevor talked. And one thing,
that's a huge compliment.
yeah,
yeah.
I said the same thing to Jacobs, and he responded with the same compliment.
Man, I'll just say it. I listened to Trevor's podcast, and that's the most in depth I've ever heard Trevor speak about his life or anything like that. But I'm a huge Trevor Brazil fan, and was before that podcast, and I'm lucky enough to know Trevor a little bit. Like I know him. I'm not sure if he really knows me, but he definitely always stops and pretends like he does, and that means something, because when Trevor was rodeoing, I can't imagine a busier guy in pro rodeo doing, 3 events and bouncing around here to there. Like, I never recall seeing Trevor at the rodeo walking somewhere where it looked like he was just strolling along. Like,
yeah.
I mean, dude's on a mission everywhere he was going, but also on a mission. Oh, hey, Tilden, how you doing? How's the rodeo been? Like, gonna stop and shake your hand, and you felt like he meant it when he walked off, and I think that's because he did. I mean, really genuine guy, great guy about his business. Like, I enjoyed the podcast. My favorite part was when he was talking about his dad, telling him about the kids in Oklahoma. They were always better. I'm like, definitely gonna do that with my kids. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, you said the way like he always stops and talks to you. Like, I remember being in Phillipsburg, Kansas. I got on Eclipse of Benny's.
Oh yeah.
And I was even more of a nobody then than I am now. Like, rodeo time was not a thing. But I had met him one time in Mesquite. And I mean, just as a rodeo cowboy, I was a fan of Trevor, just like everyone is. And I remember him stopping and talking to me in Phillipsburg in the parking lot. And I just remember it like it was yesterday, because it was so neat that this celebrity, not only remembered, but took the time, and I've always, tried to recreate that with people when I get the chance to meet someone or see someone a second time. But one thing that he said that was neat to hear him talk about, and I'm sure you remember it, but like, you may not have, he talked about the differences in rodeo with, scores and weather and animals and how different it could be from rodeo to rodeo compared to, for instance, basketball. Mm-hmm. And he talked about, I guess, going easy on yourself because you may not have an opportunity to win like you did, and take advantages of the opportunities to win. And I guess I've always felt obligated to consider every rodeo like I do have the opportunity to win, and if I don't, I need to take responsibility and blame myself. And so, having been to the, how many NFRs you been to? 9?
Mm-hmm.
How does that? How could you relate to that mindset with him essentially extending himself grace? I feel like when his calf didn't tie the same as maybe Corey Solomon's that night.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about that on the drive over here. Like, rodeo's like no other sport that I know of, right? Like, I mean, there's so many variables that are out of your control. Like, you can prepare yourself all week long. You can get there. You can do everything perfect and still not win or even get close, right? Like, I mean, you didn't have the right horse. You did have the right horse, and he didn't have his day. You did have the right horse. He did have his day, but someone else had a better day, and those two judges liked it better. You know what I mean? Like, it's essentially which girl's the prettiest out there. And, you've got 2 guys out there, a different 2 guys at every rodeo. Like, it's not like the same 2 guys judge every ride all year long. So there's a lot of consistency lost within that, because, one guy's idea of a perfect bareback ride might be different than the other guy's idea of a perfect bareback ride. And if you've ever read the judging criteria for what those guys have to work with, it's a lot of gray area, basically. I mean, there's very few just hard line deals you have to do in a bareback ride. So it's like, obviously, I think the way I do it is great. Like, I mean, there's guys that I think ride better than others, and there's a way of doing this that I think is the best way to do it. But I mean, I have also been standing at Cheyenne in the beer stand over there and heard some old boy that used to ride barebacks. And I mean, guy used to ride, has a son that's been to the NFR, like, great guy. Like, he wasn't really trashing Casey, but I just heard him and he was like, that Casey Field's too mechanical. And I'm just, in that moment, I was like, oh, there's people out here that don't think Casey's good at this, you know? I was like, what am I doing, you know? But it's a fine line of like
Too
you said,
mechanical.
giving yourself grace, because like you have to have, to me, you have to have the confidence to go out there and win. And if you just tear yourself apart, like dissect everything you do and just put it all on yourself, and it's hard to get that confidence, because we could pull up a 90-point bareback route I've made or something here, and I can find you some mistakes in it, in my opinion, of what I think is supposed to be perfect. So it's like, you know, what Trevor's saying is so true, and it's something that I don't know if, you know, the records may show that he figured it out way sooner in his career than a lot of guys. It's something I've more or less figured out in the last few years of my career, you know, because you get to thinking like, I'm a freaking badass. I can spur any horse. I can win on anything. I can make this one better. I can do that. And then it don't work that way. You know, sometimes it does, really it does. And then you get there, and then when it stops working like that or whatever, you get so down on yourself that you can't even find the confidence to go out there. You know, it's just, it's a fine line you have to walk between like being honest with yourself, watching your rides, saying, I could have done this better, you know, or look at it and say, horse didn't buck, or the judge screwed me, whatever it is. I mean, there's always, like, there's so many things that you could have done right, and it's still not been your day. And I mean, I think extending yourself that grace, like Trevor said, is important to, one, not only, I mean, it's a long year, right? Like, so you're going to go on, it's a roller coaster, like even on a good year, you know what I mean? It's so funny to watch now, like after years of doing this, you know what I mean? Like, you have one of those years where you can't miss, and you miss one time and it feels like the world's ending, you know what I mean? But you have one of those years where it just feels like you can't draw nothing to save your life. You get that one good one, and it's like, oh, I'm the best guy in the world again. You know, it's an emotional roller coaster, right? But if you don't extend yourself that grace, it's just going to be hard to be consistent over a full season, much less 10 full seasons, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, so many things are out of your control. You got to control the things you can and not worry about the things you can't.
So I guess the other end of that spectrum, which haven't been to 9 NFRs, if you were ever on that end, it's been a long time, you know. Trevor, I think you guys just don't do this, but I would think the other end of that spectrum is it's never your fault. And to me, my observation is that's what would delineate an amateur from a professional. Like at the amateur level, it seemed to me that when someone didn't succeed, it was never their fault in their mind. And that's the other extreme. And
you're 100% onto something there. Like, I mean, you can't win with that mentality, right? Like, if you don't have some ownership of what you're doing, you're never going to beat guys that do, you know. And even the most naturally talented, best guy in the world, like, I mean, come along and do it good, you know, whatever, at a high level. But if every time something goes wrong, it's someone else's fault, like whether it's this year or next year, a year down the road from that, like, sooner or later, you're going to be in a position where your performance is going to suffer over that, you know. And most people aren't the most talented person in the world, so they never even get to the point where they're winning, you know, if they have that attitude. One thing I notice, and I see it, like, I'm on Facebook, but I don't even know if I've ever made a post. Like, I'm a creepy Facebook watcher, basically, you know. I don't know how creepy I am, but anyway, I don't think people's family members understand how much putting that out there can affect someone's performance, right? Like, I don't think
putting what out there,
like, it's someone else's fault. Like, I mean, and I'm not singling one person out specifically, but like, even within my family, like if I get screwed or feel like I get screwed, it's pretty easy for me to shake it off. My wife don't take it quite as well. My mom especially doesn't take it as well, you know. But one thing I've had a hard line on my entire career, because a lot of times at the NFR, like, we'd all ride to the rodeo. I'd ride there with Casey, and then whenever I leave the rodeo, I'd jump in with my family, and they take me back wherever I'm going. Well, that's either like the greatest ride ever because we're going to the South Point, or that's like the judges suck, the PRC, everything, like they screwed you, your horse didn't buck, like whatever. Like I've had a hard line my whole career. Like that's not how we roll. Like that isn't it. Like I'll sort this out, but we're not supposed to get in here and make it point fingers everywhere about it being someone else's fault.
Yeah.
And I have a great family. If anything, they just love me too much sometimes and just can't see past, that. And we've had some arguments where it's like, hey, that's enough. Like stop talking about this. And then you see like, Facebook is what made me think of it. Like you see guys that are young and coming around and their dads or whatever will, post one of their rides on Facebook and be like, that's the best 78 I've ever seen. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And they're right to an extent, but the more you tell your kid he's getting screwed, the more he's going to start believing it. You know what I mean? Like that was never like my dad wasn't, a NFR cowboy, but he rode and he understood competition. And so from early on, it was like, we never blame the judges. We never cuss the judges, like let's figure out what we did wrong. Cause end of the day, like you may think they're screwing you, and maybe they are, but they're not liking something about what they're seeing. So you better look at it and figure out how to change it. Right. Like you keep doing the same thing, you probably keep getting the same result. Right. So my point is I think if you have someone that you love a lot and they're competing in this sport, like be mindful of how much you tell them it's not their fault, right? Like I mean, also one extreme to the other, like don't tell them it is all the time their fault, right? Like I mean, I think the happiness is found somewhere in the middle, you know what I mean? Like it's just it's hard enough to keep yourself in that headspace. It's harder, and I've seen it affect guys. A lot of guys that when the people around them can't keep themselves in the right headspace too.
Well, that's the double-edged sword part. I think it's just too extreme.
Yep.
And what lesson, similar to what we've talked about, Trevor's a great example of a bunch of them. I mentioned Jacobs earlier, but you traveling with Casey that long, what lesson did you learn from him that you kind of maybe didn't expect, or just a big one that you took from him?
Just keeping it simple. I mean, Casey's mind works a lot the way Trevor's does, it sounds like, when listening to that. And Casey's not the only one. Like I'm a student of this game. Like I haven't won a world championship yet, but I've been very fortunate to be around guys that are going to go down in history as the best to ever do this. And I keep my eyes open and I watch them and I try to figure out a way, like not just Casey. Like, I mean, I've spent time with Tim O'Connell. I've spent time around Jess Pope. I've spent time around Clayton Bigelow, and I try to watch these guys and Will Lowe, like all these guys, and see like what makes them special. And what, like one thing I will say, like that is unanimous with all of those guys. Well, not all of them. Tim's a lovable psycho. Like his brain works a little more like mine. Like he wants to know what all's going on. But like Clayton Bigelow, Casey Field, Will Lowe, like a lot of these guys don't even know what horse they're getting on when they get there. You know what I mean? Like they keep it that simple. Like, I mean, it doesn't change what, like Casey knows about 3 horses through his entire career, and it's going to be the best 3 horses that ever lived kind of thing. Like short of that, like he don't know nothing. Like, I mean, it's mark them out, set your feet and have fun. Like, I mean, that's it. Like, and if he calls me tomorrow before I get to Texas City, that's exactly what he's going to say, like he hasn't taken I haven't noticed that he was paying too close attention to rodeo while I was gone this year, or while I was rodeoing this year. And then calls me the other day when I had Nightcrawler right before I get there, and he's like, "You're pretty," like he was excited about that, But his advice on Nightcrawler is the same as it is on some Survey horse you've never heard of. It's mark them out and go have fun. Good, strong start, strong finish, like simple. Keep it that simple. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I would say that's pretty much the biggest thing that I've picked up from him and most other world champion I've been around. You know what I mean? I think it's important though to because I'm guilty of this, right? Like figure out what these guys are doing that works best for you. Because I've had seasons where I just was like, I'm going to do everything just like Casey, right? Like, and during those times, I might have had more confidence. I obviously had more confidence in what Casey was doing than what I was doing, but there's something I do that got me where I'm at too. You know what I mean? So like when I started finding real success, like when things started really getting good for me in 2017, 18, 19, like to me, those felt like when things changed for me, you know, being a guy that was going to be at the NFR to being a guy that was going to be at the NFR and in contention for a world championship. Right. And that was whenever I started owning my own shit. Cause that's another thing those guys do. Like, and JB's the same way, like whatever JB's doing, you know, like be it, you know, smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, he 100% believes that's the absolute best way to do it, and that's how everybody should do it. And if you don't do it that way, you're probably kind of stupid. You know what I mean? And like Casey's the same way. Like whatever Casey's doing, he truly believes in his mind that's it, and his shit works better than everybody else's, and all those guys are that way. So it's like, to me, I was like, I called a ride with Tim O'Connell and Jess Pope somewhere, and I was just like, man, like Tim and I had never really meshed that well. Like he's just way more intense of a guy. Like he, you know, he was a different guy then, and I was a different guy then too. Like we were both just, I mean, just we didn't click that well. And today he's one of my best friends. Like I really liked him a lot. And but when I caught that ride with him, I just remember like thinking to myself, I'm like, well, Tim's won the last 3 world championships, and he knows what horse he's getting on. He knows every one of these horses. Like, because my natural inclination is to want to have all the information I can, where I found this kind of special spot where I don't overdo it, and I also know what I'm getting into, you know. But it was in that moment where I was like, I've got to find things that bring out the best in me. Like, I don't need to do things exactly like Tim O'Connell or exactly like Wade Sundell or exactly like Casey Field. Like, I got to find the things those guys do that make me better, you know? And it was in that moment that I feel like a lot of things changed for me.
Yeah. Dang. Yeah. I think one thing I do tell, I like for my interns to be 21 and up, because that, they've seen a little bit of road. They're not going to turn around and go back home.
Right.
And cause I did have a 19-year-old just leave in the night, and I like that level of maturity, but it also means that you've got 21 to 3-year-olds showing up here to learn how to rodeo. And now when they do get out on the road, they're competing against 18 and 19-year-olds that have been rodeoing since they were 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, you know, I didn't start rodeoing. I got on in high school, but I didn't really start rodeoing till college. And I remember feeling that way, like seeing guys, like I remember fighting bulls at Huntsville College Rodeo, and I remember watching you get taped up. Remember they had it out at in Bubba.
It was like a makeup deal.
Yeah. And I've always remembered that was when I met you, and I really felt like I was like, man, this guy's on it. I could tell watching you get ready, this guy's on a different trajectory than the rest of this crowd. And there was something different about your level of thinking. I remember thinking that, sitting back there. And I've always gone back to that in my mind. Regardless, the thing I'm trying to get to is these guys come in here, they're 22 years, 23, they've been on 40 head. And I just try to have a conversation with them like, look, this is your path. And you're going to compete against guys that are, you go out there and you see Stetson Wright is their same age, and he's got, 8 world titles.
Right.
And you can't help but feel behind.
Yeah.
But that happened to me in the bronc riding. I was college roommates with Jacobs, and he's slightly younger than me. And in the bronc riding, bull riding, I'm the world's greatest. But in the bronc riding, like he's, had been to a couple of NFRs by that point. And I just had to realize, like, this is my path and this is what I'm walking. And it put me at peace, knowing that. And it sounds like you had to have a similar conversation with yourself where you got to realize, like, you're not Casey. you're not. But was that something you dealt with, like comparing yourself to those guys, or were you just trying to establish your philosophy?
I don't think it's something I'd like struggle. Like, I mean, let me say this: my in arena performance struggled because of it sometimes, right? Like I didn't ride, like I just wasn't as effective with that mindset. It's nothing I ever like mentally. It's not something I just like beat myself up over or spend even a lot of time thinking about. It was just like, I mean, like I'm still this way. Like if I'm doing something, I mean, same as everyone else, like I want to be the absolute best at it. Right. And like, I've never naturally just been the absolute best at anything that I can think of, you know. But I just, when I get locked in on it, it's like, it's all I'm thinking about. It's all I want to do. Like, and so I'm looking at it from every different angle, you know? And so it's just like, this guy is winning every time we nod our head. Like, what is, like, I'll just do stuff like him, you know what I mean? Like, it was more like from a competition standpoint. Like I was just in my mind, that's what I was doing to try to get better.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't say it was a mental struggle. It was just, I mean, it was a mental thing, but it was just kind of like, to me, that's what it seemed like I needed to be doing to get better. Right. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and it just is like, I found out like, hey, yeah, I mean, on a way bigger scope, what you're saying is exactly right. Like, and I mean, whatever Tilden Hooper's path is in rodeo is obviously different than what Casey Fields' path was in rodeo. And I'm very, very comfortable with that. You know what I mean? Like I still go out with the intentions of winning a world championship. That's why I'm still doing this. But I'm also to a point in my life where I see it for what it is. Like I get how, and not to discredit anyone that's ever won one, but I see how right things have to go for a guy to win a world championship. I see that you could still be really, really, really good at what you do, and it may never line up like that for you. You know what I mean? And and like I said, not that those guys aren't great. Like, but when I mean, the world championship and the bareback riding last year essentially came down to one jump, and what I mean in saying that is Jess Pope in the 10th round on gunfire made a mistake for the first time at the NFR ever, which is amazing. It's the only one I can think of him making. And it wasn't, I mean, by a lot of people's standards, it probably wouldn't even be considered a mistake. But when you get on that level, like, he wins the round on that horse. I don't know the math on it, but I know that him and Keenan were very, very close. You know what I mean? And so, like, Pope wins the round, Keenan doesn't. Pope might be your world champion last year, and that's essentially one jump. You know what I mean? And like any of the times that I've been out there and been close, you know, and I think if you're in the top 5, you were probably out there and had a chance. You know, if you drew a couple more of the right horses or you rode a little better, like I can go back and look and break that down to a couple different jumps that cost me money, not like a couple different rides, but like one jump here, one jump there. Like, I mean, it's the competition is that tough. So it's like, it's something I kept thinking of when we were talking about all the stuff with Trevor and the giving yourself grace and like some advice for, you know, that I've picked up from these world champions or whatever. And I don't know that I picked this up from these guys, but I 100% know this in my heart is if you get all of your happiness from what happens out there in that arena, you're not going to be a real happy guy. And that's, you could have, and this isn't something I've seen Casey go through, but I'm just saying you could have a Casey Field amount of gold buckles and still not be happy if that's the only place you get your happiness from. Because I mean, I did this my whole career with a guy that's won more than anyone has in our event. And I've seen him have hard times throughout this. I've seen him go through slow periods. I've seen him go through times where he wasn't riding as good, you know, as whatever, you know what I mean? And so if it can happen to him, anyone I know that does this and has done it for a long time will tell you that it is an emotional roller coaster. And if you get too high in the highs and too low in the lows, it'll ruin you. And then when you get done with this, you see it, and I see it, especially a lot of my friends are going through it, and some of them coming through on the other side of it finally. But it's like, you get done with this and you're not in the arena anymore. So now where's my happiness come from? So like, I think it's always important to look around and see the situation that God has you in and the things that he's blessed you with, and recognize the things that aren't in that arena, because it's such a small part of your life and who you are, that it's awesome and it's great and we all love to do it, but it's going to be over one day. And, end of the day, it's just a very small portion of your life. So I strongly advise to, look around at what else God's given you besides what's happening in that arena, because it's a rough road if that's where it's all coming from.
Yeah. Another conversation I have with these interns that come through here, because they're starting at, let's say, 23, they're getting started. I typically only have anywhere from 8 to 10 guys or girls here that are maybe trying to compete. Mm-hmm. So, compared to the number of people that want the position, there's a long line of people that want the position. So if it's, 10 and under that I'm going to have in here, I want them to take full advantage of, back here we have, we got a bucket machine, we've got a gym, sauna, we've got all the things. I've got practice once a week. They live in Texas, so there's access to other things. There's rodeos going on. And in my opinion, as a 23-year-old in rough stock specifically, if you're getting started at 23, it's okay that, it's your path, but also you need to be doing all the things. So like, if you've been rodeoing since you're 11 and you're 23 and you choose not to work out every day, that, okay, whatever. But if you're going to get started at 23, what would you expect their extracurricular time needs to be spent on?
It's just exactly what you just said. Like, I think when you're dealing with a 15-year-old kid or whatever, there can be too much. An 11-year-old kid, there can be too much. You're either getting on too much or you're wanting them to be in the gym or these different things. Like, every kid's different, right? But like, certain aspect of this has to be fun for a kid to want to remain involved in it, and their body can only take so much, right? Like, physically. So, but if you're a 23-year-old guy and you're getting into this at 23, for one, I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if you want to be a bareback rider. Like, if you miss the boat on all the other stuff, we still got room for you on this bareback riding boat. Cause I really, I don't think, it's very uncommon for a young 15, 16-year-old kid to be really, really good at bareback riding. They're out there. Rocker Keenan was probably good at that age. There's a kid right now here in Texas named Cash Lloyd, and Cash won the national high school finals last year. He's a bigger, stouter kid, and he's a real deal. Like, same as every kid that was ever good at that age, he's still got to get better, and I believe that he will. Like, but end of the day, there's a difference between that guy and someone that's 23 years old. Like, you need to be in the gym. You need to be like, what you're trying to do right now is get those 40 or 50 head out of the way to where you can start learning how to ride. Like, cause a lot of that's going to be a blur. Like, really, not that you shouldn't be trying hard to do things right every time, but really, in the grand scheme of things, you're just trying to pull the trigger enough times that, like, sooner or later I get on and I nod and I see this enough that I'm able to do the things that I need to do. I need to be on my spurboard. I need to be, I don't know about in the bronc riding. In the bareback riding, I'm a big spurboard guy. I think the bucket machines are okay, but I think they move, so they allow you don't have to do everything perfect to make what looks like a perfect ride on there. You can it can kind of deceive you a little bit, whereas the spurboard's just sitting there, so it's like you look pretty dumb if you're not doing it right, and you have to do it all yourself. And I'm a big spurboard guy. Riding horses, one thing that was hard for that I think slowed my learning process down is I'd ridden a saddle horse 2 or 3 times before I got on a bareback horse, and I just wasn't comfortable on horses or livestock or whatever. So, like, whatever you can do to be on or near a horse and riding them, whatever, like, that's going to help you in the long run. And it's just, I think once you get to that age, like, I think freaking as much as you can, getting on, practicing. I think when you are practicing, practice with a purpose. Like, what are we looking for today? Be honest about what you're expecting to get out of this today. Like, if you've never rode a horse and you're expecting to walk in there and make a 24-point spur ride, you're going to get let down every time. But if you've never rode a horse and today I want to get a strong mark out and make the whistle, then that's a goal. Like, I mean, I help over at Tarleton with their rodeo team with their bareback riders, and we've got 4 bareback riders right now, and they're all at different levels in their riding, basically. So I mean, my advice and my critique of their rides are all 4 different. You know what I mean? I expect something different out of all 4 of them. You know what I mean? And they're all 4 getting better every time. You know, and I think you have to be honest with yourself, and I think you have to. I mean, if it's not something you're wanting to do every day, then I mean, maybe it's not even something you should be doing, right? Like, I mean, it's just, if you're not eat up with it to the point where someone's having to get in there and say, hey, maybe you're doing this too much. Like, if someone's having to encourage you to do it more, than, you know, maybe something else. And that's okay too. That's something at these rodeo schools when we do them or whatever, like, everyone's not meant to be, that's not God's plan for everyone, but you're here and you just did something that the majority of the population would never even try. So, like, let's take that right there in itself. Like, you just were mentally able to make yourself sack up and come over here and get on a bareback horse. Yeah. Like, how can that benefit me down the road? Like, whether it's, you know,
dang,
now I'm not riding bareback horses anymore, but I'm supposed to walk in here and apply for this job or whatever it is. Like, I mean, this guy's not going to buck me off and kick me in the head. Like, low chance of me dying doing this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what do I have to be scared of now? You know, like,
low chance, still a chance.
Yeah, right.
But low chance.
Yeah, like, I'm just saying, like,
no, that's good.
You come to the rodeo school, or you come here and you have all this, and you try it for a little while, and you kind of start to realize that maybe it's not what you want to do. There's no shame in that, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, I respect. There's this guy, like, and I'm not gonna say his name because I wouldn't want someone to think that I was making fun of him. But some people, and you know him, I would imagine. But this is a bareback rider, a few years younger than me. Could kind of ride. Like, I mean, dang sure could beat you on the right horse or whatever. Well, this guy drew Craig at midnight up in Vernal at, like, when Craig was at his peak, you know, just throwing people out of the arena, and he turned him out and was like, I'm not ready for that horse. And then a week or 2 later, he found out, like, he's done riding barebacks, and he just realized it wasn't for him. And then, to me, I didn't feel like that was because he was scared of that horse. I think he just realized where he was at on this deal. And to me, I respect a guy more for doing that than, like, almost killing themselves over and over and over again. When everyone else knows, and you know they know too, but they're just too dumb or too proud to say it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's no shame in that. And I just remember thinking, like, I bet this guy is so much happier now doing whatever he's doing than he would have been if he'd have just tried to stay out here for another 3 years to convince himself that he could make, you know what I mean? Yeah. He'd have left bitter and cold or whatever. And I'm sure that was a tough call to make. I don't know that I'm smart enough to have made it, but
that's exactly what happened for me in the bareback riding. Like, we've talked about it before, but Medicine Woman, we didn't know who she was. So I was just got on her in a bareback rigging. But then later, golly, I don't remember enough to know what she felt like. She just jumped me, jumped me. But later at Longview, I'd entered Longview because the year before I did pretty good on Shady Lady of Andrews, and make you feel like a bareback rider.
I think I was there. Yeah.
Make anybody feel like a bareback rider. You know, it was kind of light rain as always in Longview, so I was like, I got to go back same night, and drew Coolwater. Mm-hmm. And called Jake Brown. Hey, what about? He laughed, you know, that I didn't know who he was. And then Jacob's just slapping him out. And afterwards, Jacob's like, "Man, I thought you were gonna die. I'm just so glad you got bucked off into your hand." Yeah. And I was like, I thought I was gonna die. And that was the beginning of the end for me with bareback riding. with bronc riding, like I want to get on any of those horses.
Mhm.
Not saying I'm going to spur cool water in a bronc saddle, but like the
You feel like you have a
challenge-
chance to, so you do actually.
or
you know?
yeah, it excites me, the challenge of that. And I was so okay with quitting bareback riding just because I didn't want to do something I was so scared of.
Yep.
And I had so much respect. My dad always, he loved to talk about Wes Stevenson, and maybe it's because when Wes is in the chute, it's just this noticeable difference on his face.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad would say, like, man, he goes to a place where his own mother doesn't recognize him. And he's like, that's what you got to do in the bareback riding. I wasn't that good at that. I respect guys that can. I admire it the most. And I talk about bareback riders all the time because I tried it. I couldn't do it. But, man, the guys that can and make a career out of it like yourself, like they're the last guy I would ever want to fight because it's just.
Start with me if you got to. I'm probably not the toughest one of them.
There are some people, like for instance Bill Tudor, who I can see the arena, but I can't remember the town. It'll come to me later. But he's like got his hand in the rigging, and there's flag girls or whatever, but he's waiting, and I'm about to slap his horse out, and somebody next to me, and he's just like sitting there, hand in the rigging, and he goes, "Did you buck stitch that belt?" Because it was a buck stitched belt, and the guy said whatever, and he was like, "That's a neat belt." And then he turns and then just rides this horse, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many points he was, but like I'm just watching this interaction. I slap his horse out, and I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you like, how are you not in? So there's people that can be that calm about it.
Yeah.
I
like seeing how everybody is in that moment. It's because everybody has to go to a different place, right? Like,
where do you have to go?
I'm closer to where Bill's at. Like,
really?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I have a switch, but it don't flip until like, I mean, I can be talking to you till I nod. Like, I mean, and in different moments, it's different. But I mean, I remember I got on Grated Coconut twice. Once he almost killed me. It was a valiant effort I would say it started as a bareback ride, went to bronc riding somewhere in the middle, and then finished as a bull rider, and still didn't get him rode. Like, I mean,
it's such a funny way to put it.
Yeah, like, I mean, and so I draw him.
Bareback riders will very much appreciate that line.
Yeah, I started out with the best of intentions, but at the end it was like kind of one of those screw the form, get the horn kind of deals.
Yeah, yeah.
And that still didn't work. Like, he still threw me off. And anyway, I drew him again the next year at Pinoca, and it was a whole deal. But anyway, Casey had him right before that, like at Calgary, maybe the year before that or something, and he like I mean, that horse would just stand there, stock still, and not move a muscle, and just you run your hand in, and as soon as you cracked your hand around and started sliding up, you could just feel him like knotting up underneath you. And I mean, it's just, he was the most intimidating horse I've ever been on. And I think about this sometimes. Like, I wonder if it's like when you go to Six Flags when you're 5 and then you go back when you're 15. Like, I was so much younger then. Like, maybe he was just more intimidating then. But either way, still to this day, like, I've been on pretty much all of them, and he was the most intimidating horse I'd been on. And anyway, everybody, also the riders generally are pretty geared up when they get to that point. So you hit your rigging and nod, and I mean, like, the hardest, he just would be standing stock still and then jump, leave over the gate, maybe sometimes get his feet over the gate, and then just kick right there so hard that he'd almost kick guys off of the chutes, and has, so it's like this big first just deal right there, and Casey had him at Calgary, and, fired up as you've seen Casey in the chute probably ever, and like hits his rigging, nods, and this thing, I mean, leaves there like a rocket, jerks Casey down, slaps him first jump, and then Casey sits up and rides him, which I don't know how. Like, I mean, makes a perfect ride after that first jump, and but didn't get a score, didn't win Calgary. Seen him do that a million times with guys. Well, the day I draw him in Pinoca, Rod Hay comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Tilden, I know you got the stud later. I've got an idea. I was wanting to try something. I was like, do you think maybe, like, I've cupped his eye before, but it's like he can still feel you guys up underneath there and like still knows it's coming. So, would you want to try something a little different today? And I was like, well, Rod, I tried everything I knew how to do last time and it didn't work. So sure, let's go. What do you got on your mind? And anyway, his idea was cup his eye and then me to get back underneath my rigging and get laid back all the way where I wanted to be and just sit there until we felt him relax, which is a really vulnerable place to be in the bareback riding, where you're back, chest out, flat up against his back, lined up dead in the middle of him, to where if he smashed you, it would definitely break some stuff. So I was like, sure. I mean, he wasn't bad to like rear up and smash anybody in there. So we told the gate man, who in the short round about an hour before that had opened the gate when I was sitting on the flank of this horse, like before I ever nodded. So like we got him, we're like, hey buddy, like this time I'm not even going to nod.
In the long round, you mean?
Well, like Pinoca had then, I don't know how they do it now, but they would have like an 8-man or 10-man short round and then bring 4 back.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Shootout. So like just a few hours before that. And, so we find this guy, I tell him, I'm like, hey, I'm going to get back underneath my rigging. Everybody's going to be real quiet. And when this horse relaxes, I'm just going to look at you. And then that's when I want you to open the gate. But do not do it before then. Like, I'll make eye contact, and then you need to open the gate. And he's like, all right. And so Casey's there for the game, for the meeting. Everybody's there. Everybody has a plan. I get in there, and I'm running my hand in, and I can hear Casey's voice is getting louder and louder. He's like, yeah, spur this thing, just like all the stuff that guys say. And whenever I crack my hand around, I just look up there, and I'm like, hey, screw you. I'll ride this thing how I want. Be quiet. And whenever I said it, I started getting back underneath my rigging, and I could see Keith Merrington's face up there he's up there on his head, and his face is just like, oh my God, like he's just to die. Like this is going to be real bad. Like he's having a conversation right now before he nods, and so I got back there, laid there 30 seconds, something like that, felt him relax, looked at the gate man. Rod's got his eye, ripped the gate open. Like he still makes this big move out of there, like jumps, turns, kicks somebody off the back of the chute almost, whatever, but the gate's out of the way. And so we just hit and go to bucking right there, come right around to the left. It was awesome. Like, but I just remember whenever I was talking as I was getting on this thing, Keith Merrington's like, oh no, this is not going to be good.
Did people do that with him thereafter?
I don't know. They retired him pretty soon after that. So, I mean, not like immediately after that, but I think that was his last year.
Do you think that horse was responding to Casey, and that's what made you tell Casey to shut up?
I wanted to make sure Casey remembered the plan. Like, hey, shut up. Let's don't take it any farther. And he did. And he calmed down, and everybody just kind of calmed down. And
also, I feel as a competitor that it's very important to keep your momentum going in the chute, because we aren't sometimes as humans as good at going from 0 to 60 as the horses are.
Yeah.
How hard was that to go from 0 to 60?
Well, knowing that I did it the exactly way I wanted to before that, and it didn't work, it wasn't like super hard to try something different.
But that's a long time.
I've never done it since. Like, I mean, that was in 2009, and I've never gotten on a horse and just hung back.
Waited.
Like, as soon as you hit your rigging, you nod and you go, because of exactly what you just said. Like, I mean, to be in that moment and then just have to stop and sit there and wait for them to be, it was weird. I was young enough and wound up enough that I didn't put that kind of thought into it at the time.
Dang.
But it's dang sure nothing I've done since then.
Yeah.
So,
that's crazy. Like, because you had that first interaction with him and then a second. Yeah, my first interaction with Coolwater, I was like, I'm done with bareback riding. Like, I'm out. This stuff sucks. To be honest, like, yeah, like if I was going to get on a bad bronc like that and know that I'm going to get bucked off, whatever. I'm not saying I'd meet them head to head like some gladiator moment or Troy, with Brad Pitt beats that, whatever. That's exciting, the thought of that fight. But prior to getting on Coolwater, I was not excited. I was scared, and I was like, I just can't wait. I can't wait to be walking back to the chutes.
Can't wait till we're all still alive and we're all still good friends. This.
Exactly. That's the moment, and that's the rodeo because before that, if you get on, I have those weekends like Shady Lady where you can be, 75, 76 points, and you feel like you're going, like, it's like, all right. But I feel like a guy should be okay with drawing anything in the pen and at least be excited to be rodeoing that day.
Yep.
And that's where
I think there's a especially now, like at this time when you're talking about, like, it was a lot of either shady lady or cool water. Like there wasn't a lot of in between on horses like that. You know, I mean, because cool water is one of the greatest horses ever. So I mean, like there wasn't like there was a whole pile of him out there, her out there. But like now there's like, I mean, if a guy's interested in kind of staying in his lane in the bareback riding, like you can put yourself in the right spot to get on fun horses and make some money. And I think the stock contractors are a little better about it now too. Like a horse like Cool Water would probably never be bucking at Longview, Texas right now. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
true.
So I mean, it's definitely not. You know, I think if you think if you're telling yourself you want to make the NFR and you want to be a world champion, if you don't have the mindset you just described where you're excited to draw horses like that, that should be your first sign that maybe, you know, like it's not, you know, but that's not to say that there's not room in the PRCA for, I mean, another guy, and like I said, I'm not going to name any names. He'll know who I'm talking about because I really like the guy, but this guy a handful of years ago, I'm at Estes Park and asked this guy, I'm like, what do you got over at Sheridan? He's like, what is that? Oh, Spilled Perfumes, Horse and Moxes, went to the NFR and the Eliminator Pen, a bunch, handful. Like, I mean, honestly, kind of like Cool Water a little bit in the fact that just bucked, and like you'd look at it and if you didn't know what you were looking at, you're just like, oh, that horse is bucking. But when you're tied to that thing, it's like all the shit's happening, you know? And, I was like, oh, and I mean, I was just immediately scared for him a little bit. And I think he saw that and he's just like, man, I don't think I'm going to go get on her though. You know, honestly, like I just do this to have fun. I'm like trying to make the circuit finals. And like, I don't really want to get on a horse like that. And I was like, that's the smartest thing I ever heard. Thank you. Get over here. Give me a hug. And the dude is a good bareback rider. Like, I mean, he is and a great guy, but like in that moment, he respected where he was at and had a fun rest of the summer and didn't put himself through that. And that's okay. You know what I mean?
There's probably an argument to be made for me where I was at, like, hey, if I would have been more self-aware, maybe gone and AMI rodeoed for 2 more years, maybe there was a future for me. Maybe. I don't think there was personally, but probably not.
I think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing right now. You know, like I think it's pretty obvious that you're on the right path. You know,
I don't know whether to say thank you or not. Maybe that's a get me back for the. No, you stick to podcast.
Hey, that's how I felt whenever I was in 8th grade. We were gonna get ready to go to 9th grade, and I'd been playing football. I was the starting center on the B team, and my best buddy from home, we both decided you wouldn't have time to go to the 10 high school rodeos and play high school football. We were big time rodeo stars, and we went and told them, the coaches, at the same time. And I was the first one, you know, I'm like, hey, I just want to let y'all know I'm not going to play football next year. And well, we understand, Hooper, not a big deal, you know. And then my buddy Spence walks up there and he's like, well, I'm not playing either. And they're like, what? And like, I'm not even out of the room. Right. And they're like, well, I mean, hey, what can we do to get you to stay? And I'm like, I turn around, I'm like, well, hell, y'all could just ask me. I'm not staying. Anyway, they were just like, no, I think you're pretty good. You know, you guys, I hope this bareback deal works out for you.
That's hilarious. So I quit bareback riding. Then I loved the other 3 events, bullfighting, bull riding, and bronc riding. But I wanted to just ride broncs at that point. Yeah. And so like, the next was to quit bullfighting, which I enjoyed. Wasn't very good at it, but I enjoyed it, and I liked being out there.
It seems like you would have to be sort of good at something like that to enjoy it
I guess maybe. But so I called Sammy Andrews because Belton was coming up, and I was supposed to fight it, and I sweated for a week, and I was like, because I had all of his rodeos that year, and which they're so fun to fight because those bulls buck so hard. They're mean, but they're 3 feet in the air. Yeah. They can't get you. Right. Like they're bucking so hard. Yeah. And I was like, Sammy, I think I'm just gonna ride broncs now. I if you can find another bullfighter, and he's just like, oh, that's all right. Yep. Come get on them in the bronc riding. See you later. And I got off the phone. I was like, dang it. Kind of wanted him to be a little disappointed.
I really thought this would be a bigger deal.
I thought this would be a bigger deal. Yeah. And that was the second most liberating rodeo moment for me. was that was that.
What a great guy, Sammy Andrews.
Oh my gosh.
You'd never like pick Sammy out of the lineup to have the, funniest one-liner during his speech at the Pro Rodeo induction the other day, but I watched it and he definitely won the contest as far as being the funniest guy. It was awesome. He thanked all his friends and stuff that have helped him through rodeo and through a couple divorces, and then he said, and some of them were probably a reason for some of those divorces. It keeps on. I was like, oh, that was great.
I love getting texts from Jaisal from Sammy, but it's just like, are they still?
Yeah, I think
okay.
So. Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I was like, that's funny to think about. Like,
it's essentially Sammy talking to Jaisal and texting me, and Jaisal's texting it out, and like it's just like I can just see him sitting next to her. But
we used to get like, you remember this probably, like there was it used to 6-10 years ago, something like that. Butlers started sending an email, like they would just send you an email like, hey, don't forget about Pretty Prairie or whatever, and also big Butler Rodeo fans. I love Benny and Rhett and the whole crew. But I would just, when I'd get those emails, I would always just mentally, I would just picture like Rhett at a computer, like a computer like we had when we were little, like I don't even know what you call it all, but him sitting there typing and Benny kind of like coming through there and like trying to tell him what to type, and them arguing over what it is, I mean, like, no, now see, Rhett, you need to tell him this here, I just imagine like, that was an email from Benny, but by way of someone else.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's funny you say that, father and son stock contractor in Longview. I remember Sammy would flank on one side on the left-hand deliveries. James is flanking on the right-hand deliveries. Mm-hmm. And Sammy's like, go tell James we're going to start over here. And I go over there. Sammy wants to start over there. James says, we're starting over here. And I was like, Sammy, James wants to start over there. And he's like, cussing, he's like, we're starting right here. I go back like, Sammy's pretty upset, James, and he wants to start over there. I'm not lying. I went back and forth like 5 times.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're cussing at me. They're cussing at each other through me. And I don't know what part of the message to deliver and whatnot. And I go, James, do you mind just talking to Sammy yourself? Because
I can't do this anymore. I can't tell him what you just told me to tell him.
I can't keep repeating these words. At the time, I'm not cussing,
Man,
now it
funny.
doesn't bother me as much, but I'll never forget in Longview going back and forth and running. Anyway.
That's good stuff.
But, speaking of rodeo, and I got a couple questions here. Oh, but one more serious one, though. But what books are you reading right now? I do like to read, and I just, man, like with the kids for the last couple of years, I've been more listening to books and podcasts and stuff like that. I would say probably the last book I listened to, I like fiction. Really?
I mean, not like crazy fiction, but the last series of books I've read was Jack Carr's, like the Terminal List.
Yeah.
James Reese series or whatever. And so I'm current on that and waiting for the next release, basically.
Nice.
Yeah. But I never was a podcast guy that much, like listening to them. I love coming and talking for a few hours, but I've never listened to a lot of them. And this summer I got into listening to yours a bunch, and then been listening to Sean Ryan some. I like Jack Carr's podcast. Sometimes he has some people on there that are interesting. I really enjoyed yours. I was thinking about this on the way here. I don't know why I thought this was so funny when you did Jim Sharp's, but you asked him this question, and I could tell you were like expecting it to be kind of like really like just groundbreaking. Like you ask him something about how much it helped him to get in the truck with Ty Murray and or with Tuff Hedeman and these guys, and like I think everyone's probably expecting him to be like, oh, it was great, we fed off each other, and Jim's like, well, I mean, I don't know, I already knew how to ride, by the time I just tell me what do you mean? And he like, you can tell a guy like that's not trying to be arrogant or anything. That was just like it. Like, he didn't get it. Like, he just totally did not get what you're saying. And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
I haven't thought about that since I asked the question, but
know what I'm talking about.
I know
though,
exactly
right?
when you're talking about, and because Jim Sharp, super humble dude.
Yeah, no,
So
I enjoyed
humble.
listening to that too. But
Like, and even just I've interacted with him. The guy building my arena is like, him and Jim are like best friends. He's come over a few times and like interacting with him outside of like even on camera. So humble, so nice, and but yeah. In that moment, it's just like, yeah, tough, Ty. They're greatest in the world. It's just, he's like, no, that didn't really. Yeah, I could have gone by myself.
yeah. Somebody to travel with. I guess.
We split gas. Like,
Save me some money. But I got tickled.
Golly,
That's fun.
I forgot about that since you brought it up. But that is 100% the way I felt. I was like, yep, not the answer.
Well, I was like myself. I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear this. Like, that's such a great question. Like, what is he going to say? How much better did it make? Because obviously, I mean, whether he said it or not, like, I mean, if you travel with the best guys in the world, it makes you better by de facto. But what's interesting about him is, I think I've probably heard him say it. Like, I mean, I know I've heard Tough say it. Like, he was the greatest sport writer, or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
But anyway, I got
funny.
tickled over that. I enjoyed that one. Really enjoyed the Eddie Gallagher one.
That's crazy.
I just, anytime you get those guys like the Special Forces guys on here, I'm a geek for all that. So I enjoyed that.
I think
the Marcus Luttrell one was the first one that I listened
Really?
to. But yeah,
guys like, in the Eddie Gallagher one, he talks about how some military guys are, he called them tourists. They do one tour and then they're out.
Yep.
And then, but to hear him talk about it, you would think that they were some 10-time tour veteran. Yeah. And there's so many similarities, I think, outside of the dying part. So I don't want to talk about that, but like, there's a lot of rodeo cowboys like that.
I think there's a lot of like crossover within the mindsets of guys or whatever. But I was thinking about that on the way here because I think the biggest, I mean, like, we're obviously doing something dangerous. They're doing something dangerous. End of the day, though, they're doing it for us, and we're doing it for ourselves. Like, it's just like there's no nobility in what we do compared to what they do,
100%.
right? Like, and it's not as dangerous, obviously, but it's just like, I mean, I think that's why I enjoy listening to that. Probably the same reason you enjoy talking to them.
Right.
You kind of like to imagine yourself in that position, but at the end of the day, we all had the same opportunity that they did to go up there and sign the dotted line and go give her hell, and we chose to go do what we've done, and so
I'm glad to hear you say that, because to be honest, as a podcast host of a show called Rodeo Time, sometimes I worry that like my listeners might wonder like, why is this guy on? But
that's what they're gonna wonder whenever they see this one.
No,
like, dude, he had Terry Bradshaw last week. No one would answer the phone. He got Tilden.
Well, I like to have, number one, people that I'm interested in talking to, because I think it makes for authentic conversation. But number two, like, man, I'm a guy, I respect someone who can go do that, be in the military. I respect, an NFL football player, and like, those are manly type things. And I like to talk, let's hear the similarities.
Yeah.
But anyhow, regardless, I appreciate the fact that you see the merit in
I enjoy it
talking to those guys.
That's what attracted me to the podcast.
Yeah. Outside of even just the patriotism part, there's a, you rode in Cody and then y'all stopped in Yellowstone.
That was funny. Yeah. So that was 100% Casey's idea. So Casey, myself, Wes Stevenson, and Tom McFarland all riding Cody, Wyoming. We got to be in Red Lodge, Montana the next day, which a lot of people do those rodeos on the same day. I'm assuming, Casey had a Casey Field amount of money won by this time of the year, and I'm assuming I must have been doing pretty good too, or we would have been entered a little differently, but we were kind of just poking around going to the rodeos we wanted to go to over the 4th of July. And so we just had that, we did Cody. Then the next day we're supposed to be at Red Lodge. I think it's 90 miles to Red Lodge, hour and a half if you go the way you're supposed to go. Well, after we ride, Casey's like, hey, well, let's just drive through Yellowstone. Like, have you ever seen Yellowstone? I'm like, no. He's like, it's pretty cool. Let's drive through Yellowstone, and we'll come out on that side of the park, and we can just drop down into Red Lodge there. And I'm like, cool. How long does it take? He's like, takes 3 hours to get through the park. I was like, cool. So we left with enough time to drive through the park, and then within 3 hours, 3.5 hours, be to Red Lodge for the rodeo to start. And so we stop, we're taking pictures. We're just full tourist mode through Yellowstone, and pop out on the other side of the park there and get a little bit of service and pull it up. And we're still, let's say, an hour and a half, 2 hours from Red Lodge. And it's not that far, but the road is just like a constant switchback for 30 miles. I don't know what it is, but it was like, it didn't look that far on a map, but it took forever, and we popped out, and everybody kind of does the math, and we're like, we're not going to make it to the rodeo, and Will or Wes and Tom were actually going to Livingston. They were just going to drop us off at Red Lodge and then haul butt over to Livingston. And everyone's laughing except for Casey. And he's won a few world championships by this time. He's like not saying anything. And like Wes calls Francie and is telling her, that we're all laughing about what idiots we are. We're like, we got to be the only people that went joyriding. Like, people are just killing themselves driving all over the country right now, and we just went driving around for fun, and we're gonna miss the rodeo, and like we're just dying laughing. And this goes on but we're still headed that way with the intention of making it. We didn't just give up, but it's like, not looking good. And Casey, he hadn't said a word for like 20 minutes, and finally he looks at me. He was like, hey, did you tell your girlfriend? It was a long time ago, right? And I'm like, yeah, I was texting her when he's like, she's going to tell Steph, and Steph's going to tell my parents. And I just remember looking at him like the 3-time world champ is scared that his parents are going to find out we missed a rodeo, whose parents also would not have cared at all. I thought it was so funny in that moment that he thought like, oh no, And so anyway, we get through the park, come flying into the rodeo, like when they're doing the national anthem. And I just remember Will and them just like kicked us out of the truck, rigging bags, and we just take off running. Well, I get up there and I had on like some kind of slippers or something and no socks. And so now like they're loading these like everything's happening. Like, you're photo finishing a rodeo or whatever. And I'm just like sitting there, and Casey's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, dude, I don't know. I don't have any socks. It's going to feel so weird. And he's like, that's it. Like, we've made it this far and you're going to let some socks get in our way. And I'm like, nope, barefoot and a bareback today. Anyway, we went out there and rode and whatever. And kind of funny looking back.
Golly. Joe Gunderson, Chandler Bounds, Hell's Angel Spar.
Ooh, I wasn't there for this. I got a call.
Oh, you weren't there?
I was a part of this, but not totally. Like, they go to some bar or whatever, I think,
you're there for the next day. Okay,
yeah.
Go
like,
ahead.
I'm flying out to meet him somewhere like a day or so later. But that night, Joe calls me and he's like, no, I got punched in the face, like just not doing good. I can't remember what he said, but I'm like, what the heck? Like, why did Joe get? But like, Joe is the nicest guy, and not to mention looks way tougher than like me and Casey, and especially looks tougher than Chandler Bounds, as do most people. Great guy, tough guy. Doesn't look that tough, probably. Anyway, long story short, I guess they had been there, and Chandler was doing what a lot of, it's funny because like little dogs do it too. Like littler, smaller, sized people seem to sometimes talk more shit than everyone else, and Chandler had some people madder than hell. Who knows what about, but this guy comes up and is going to fight Chandler, going to beat Chandler, this biker or whatever. And Joe like just walks up, is going to kind of save the day. It's just like, hey, you're not going to, and like Guess barely gets it out of his mouth. And this dude just drills him, just rearranges his face, like maybe pours a beer on Chandler's head or something and just walks off. And like, so Joe gets like nose busted. Chandler gets a beer poured on his head, and then the guy just walks off like a badass. And then I show up the next day, and Joe's got toilet paper rolls stuffed up his nose, and I think that's like I'm not sure where that came from, but I think that's
But then at the gas station,
so that's a combination of two stories. So that happened with Chandler and Joe, and then another time. Another time, I know what you're talking about now. One time during Oakdale Rodeo, we were staying at this guy named Bo Badgicloops. I don't know. I probably butchered his last name. Bo's a good guy. His dad owns the bar there in town, I believe. And we stayed there for a few days, like in between rodeos. We're having a pretty big time. Well, Casey Huckabee and I decided we were going to go into town and go to this gym. And so we're pretty happy to be in California. Weather's nice. There's some bikes around there. So we take these bicycles, not motorbikes, and ride them to the gym. And then we're riding back, and I think we get done and we come out, and one of the bikes has a flat. I don't remember if it's mine or Huck's, but one of them has a flat. And so we're like kind of pushing it along there. I don't know if our cell phones are dead or something, but like we look over here, and it's kind of like an industrial set of buildings, and there's like this one with the garage door open and all these motorcycles right there. And we're just like, oh, hell, they'll fill our tires up, and I walk over there, and we both walk over there, and they've got vests on and stuff. And I'm like standing beside this one motorcycle, and I can't remember which one of us did the talking. I'm kind of assuming it was probably me. I'm like, hey, what, our tire's flat, like, could we get some air for our tire? And this guy's like cranking a wrench, and I'm like standing pretty close to this motorcycle, and he looks up. He's like, you know whose effing motorcycle that is? That's the president of the Hells Angel, you dumb MFer, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, and Huck just keeps walking. Like, I mean, like it was either him or I just can't, it's freaking 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something. But like the one that was doing the talking was like, oh shit. And the other one of us just like kept walking with our bike, like just kind of just cruised on past. And I was like, oh, well, and I just kind of did too. And then we got to the gas station, and I think we were telling the people there whatever, and they're like, yeah, that's the Hells Angels right there and all this stuff. And we're like, can we use your phone so we can call a friend to come pick us up and pick our bikes up or whatever? But I think that was a kind of a mixture of two stories.
Well, so Casey told me, the way I heard the story is like, Joe gets punched in the bar. The next day, y'all are all together.
Maybe that was it. That sounds about right. Yeah.
And then he's got stuff in his nose, like you said, and y'all are all talking about it. He goes in the gas station, and then y'all leave him there.
Oh, well, that's a mixture of like,
so he's got
times.
3 stories.
We've left Joe like at gas stations all over the country. And Joe's one of my very best friends, but just like in the group of Casey, Jess, and myself, Joe is he's just quieter. He's just more laid back. Like he's just easier to leave, like you get in there. Like I looking back over the years, like, he was one of my favorite guys to travel with, but like also he'd just get in the car and leave. And then it's like, where the hell is Joe? Like, what is it? What are we doing? Damn it. We left him again,
Oh man.
Yeah. Joe Gunderson's a great guy.
Yeah.
Easy to leave at a gas station. I think Wade's left him once or twice. He's been left by a few people at gas stations.
Yeah. Do you, this just came to me. I wasn't planning on asking this, but I just imagine, like, I know you and Jacob Sterling, y'all are all good buddies. Do you remember ever anything just going down the road, like something happening with Sterling or Jacobs?
Yeah, no, I'm surprised they didn't leave me on the side of the road once in California. I was thinking about this the other day. It was Sunday in Red Bluff, so the wild ride and all that, and this was 7 years ago, something like that, maybe. Anyway, I had a flight out the next day. Had just called a ride up there. Had it all set up to just go watch the wild ride and have a big time after, and then I did. And like I had one ride to take me back to Sacramento, but they left before I was ready to leave. So I'm like, oh, yeah, you guys go ahead. Like I'll find another ride. And then next thing you know, like I'm one of 5 people still left in the beer stand, and Jacobs and Sterling and Richie are there, and I'm like, hey, will y'all give me a ride back? And they're like, yeah, sure. I'm like, I'm pretty wound up. Well, we get in there and I start picking with Jacobs, and I can see that it's eating at him, and like we kind of have this little relationship anyway. That's like, I mean, we're obviously friends, but it's like I got in there and I like. We spent about an hour saying
y'all are head to head.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Your intelligence level is very similar.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's been that way since the very first time we met each other. And I do like Jacobs, and I do consider him a friend. But I just like I can't remember what I said. I honestly, I do remember what I said. I told him congratulations, on winning the world championship. But like I think I finished it with something like I never really thought it was possible or something like just some sort of like it sounded like a compliment, but it probably wasn't really,
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't need your approval, and I'm like, and then next thing you know, it's an hour and a half back to Sacramento of me and Jacobs just saying the meanest thing you could think to each other. But both of us also like kind of I think have a similar sense of humor, so it wasn't making me mad. Like I wasn't mad. He wasn't mad. Like we were just verbally jousting, for 2 hours. But on the opposite side of that is Richie sitting in the back seat between Sterling and I. Well, I'm now shit talking Sterling's brother, so he is mad. Like Sterling is offering to get out and fight every 15 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, let's go, but then Richie, who like is the most awkward, non-confrontational guy in the world. It's just like sitting between Sterling.
So, and you're kind of tuned up at this point. So this is a
very like way overdrank.
This is not a podcast, Tilden.
Oh,
this is
no. This is
a young and rodeoing.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm ashamed to say I wasn't even that young, but definitely had a pretty large time that day, and I just remember. Jacobs and I think we might be better friends now. This was also around about the time that Jacobs was going to get on some bulls and win the all around, maybe because it was right when maybe when Trevor retired or something, or something opened up in the all around, and Jacobs was like, "I'm going to go ride some bulls. I used to ride bulls in high school. Yeah, so did I, but you're not going to win the all around." I think that's kind of how this all started, And he's like, "Well, he even said something to the effect of." Like, I just entered one of Sammy's rodeos, and if I don't draw something nice, I'm not going to go. I was like, well, Sammy doesn't have anything nice, so you need to turn out right now. Like guys that ride bulls really, really good go to Sammy Andrews rodeos, and they don't ride one single bull. It happens all the time, And he's like, well, I'm going to do this, And I think that's how this whole thing started, But so we make it to that was all pretty funny and got pretty awkward by the time we got to where we were going. But what I remember, like the cap of the night, like being kind of funny, is we get to Buffalo Wild Wings, and we're all staying at the same hotel, probably the same hotel room. So we get there, it's like, okay, like I mean, Jacobs and I have basically done everything besides talk about each other's moms, kind of deal in there, and everybody like. But for whatever reason, it didn't seem real awkward for me or him, but it was really awkward for Sterling. Richie, and we go in there, and like it's kind of died down a little bit, and we're like sitting at the table, and the lady comes around and takes our order, and I'm like, everybody orders, I'm like, I'll just have a beer or whatever. And Richie's like, you need to eat, and I'm like, I'm not hungry, Richie, of course, he's like, you need to eat, and I'm like, I'm fine, just being an idiot, whatever. Anyway, comes back out, they bring all these wings, and sit them all out there. Well, there's like a little tray of them sitting beside me, and I'm like talking, I take a wing and eat it. And about 6 wings in, Richie just like shoves 2 more cartons over there to me, and he goes, I ordered you some food. That's your food. You're not stealing my food. I knew you were gonna want some food. So Richie was smart enough. He went ahead and ordered me some wings, and I thought I'd been for about 30 minutes just like stealing his wings. And he's like, you're not taking anything from me. Those are yours. Here you go.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, that was my last funny story with those guys. Jacobs and he started back getting on the other day. That's been pretty cool for him, getting to see him get on those horses, and he's been doing real good.
Yeah. I was thinking about his first ride back whenever you mentioned earlier about having been in the game so long, and kind of like you've gotten to a certain level where you know what it takes to get you ready. And it was like he took 17 months off and then got on that first one back that you helped him with. But I'll ask about this last story, but I know you guys pick up a lot of hitchhikers. One of them was Native American, maybe?
Yeah. Really, I mean, we've only picked up a couple hitchhikers. That one being one of them. One before I tell you this story, one time we did pick up a hitchhiker, and he got out about 15 miles later because he decided we were a little too wild and crazy for him.
I wanted to ride, but not
yeah,
this
yeah.
one.
He gave up after about. He was like, "Yeah, you guys drop me off over here." We're like, "All right, sure," you know. And so the Native American hitchhiker story is pretty funny. We're going up to Omak, Washington, and if you've ever been, you kind of drive up through middle of nowhere. I think a lot of it's on a reservation, and we're getting just about to town or whatever, and there's this real big Indian guy walking down the side of the road, like, I mean, 6 foot plus 300 pounds, like big guy. And Joe Gunderson's back in the camper catching a nap, and Jesse Davis and Casey and I are in the front, and we're like, dude, let's pull over and pick that hitchhiker up and try to get him in the camper and take off, like put him back there with Joe. And it's Casey and I's idea, and Jesse's like, oh no, I can't do that. That's mean. That's dumb. That's dangerous. It's too much, basically, is what he told us. And we're like, nah, whatever. All right. So we pass this guy, go on to the rodeo, hang out there for a little while, watch the race where they run off the deal, which is insane if you get the chance to go. It's pretty cool rodeo, really. Omak is like, I went back this year for the first time in a long time, and it's worth seeing if you're interested. But anyway, when we left out of there, now it's swapped up. Joe's in the camper, or Joe's in the truck, and Jesse's in the camper. We see the same guy walking, and we're like, let's pick him up. Joe's like, hell yeah, let's grab him. Like, never misses a lick. Like, no one thinks it's too much now. And so we do, like, get pulled over, and like the deal was we just like don't even take it out of drive. Like, I'm gonna tell this guy, like, only one place for you. You got to ride back here. We'll take you wherever you want to go, whatever. So just basically shoved him in, shut the door in case he took off, and I run up there and jumped in. And I just remember, like, I don't know, like, you know how giddy you are when you're doing so. It's like you're a little kid and you're going, you know, not knocking on the door and running off or something. Like, your heart's just pounding, you know, and like,
yeah,
get in there and take off. And we're like, whew, and just get, like, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes, I don't know, just enough for kind of the adrenaline to wear off. And like, we all just kind of like, we feel the camper move a little bit, and we're like, was that too much? Like,
did we just mess up?
Does he kill Jesse now? Or like, I don't know. Yeah, we're fine. Like, three of us are pumping each other up, but we're like, we start having our doubts that maybe we crossed some kind of line, that this could get out of hand, you know? And true to Jesse Davis form, like, he didn't care. He's back there watching TV, and they just, like, we keep going. And now it's like, now it's not even a funny joke because Jesse's not calling, freaking out, you know, like, what we didn't realize is we didn't have any phone service. So like, Jesse had been calling, but not to freak out. He called for 10, 15 minutes to tell us that the guy only needed to go like 5 miles down the road. And so we picked this guy up 5 miles from where he was going, and then drove him about 15 miles the other side of where he was going, and stopped and had to put him out on the side of the road there. Jesse gets up there. He's like, you guys are a bunch of assholes. He's like trying to go to his kid's birthday party or something. And we're like, and Jesse's just still to this day has never even acted like it bothered him. So it's like real funny for us. But I don't even know. Jesse has a new friend. They watched some TV for a little while, and I guess the Indian guy got the bad end of the joke. We thought it was pretty funny though.
Casey said he was saying that Jesse thought he was saying that Jesse was real passionate, but he was
telling him we were passing it. Yeah.
But he said, no, we're passing it.
Yeah. Oh man, that was a fun time, different time. Like, I mean, rodeo's still real fun now for different reasons, and we did a lot of dumb stuff that I probably wouldn't recommend someone else doing, but that was a fun crew of guys. Like that Jesse Davis, man, that was a fun guy, and so was Joe. And I guess they were able to put up with Casey and I longer really than anyone else. I haven't been able to figure out why we've really had never been able to keep a consistent third or fourth guy. And then Caleb Bennett told us a few years ago that it's because we're assholes, but I don't know. I don't know if I totally believe that or not.
I just can't figure it out.
Yeah, like,
oh, really?
He's like, maybe you guys are just having a hard time finding somebody that just wants to do exactly what y'all want to do all the time. And I was like, well, that is a problem if that doesn't work out real good.
Yeah, you've been to that many NFRs, you've been rodeoing that long. Like, we know exactly the way we want this to look.
Yeah.
And if you're not down with that, don't ride with us.
Yeah, no, it is, and there's a lot of good guys out there though. It's I mean, the last couple of years of rodeo and this last year of rodeo has been so fun. Like I went to a lot of rodeos I hadn't been to in a long time, and some that I've been to never. And I entered with Cole Reiner, and I ended up having to go to a lot more rodeos than he did. So I was catching rides with other guys, and spending some time around some guys I didn't know that well that turned out to be really good guys, and I had a fun time.
Yeah. We usually wrap up with life advice, like a one-liner maybe that you've had to tell yourself or means a lot to you. Could be something just recent or maybe something from your whole career.
Sum my whole career up in one line. I love this part. I would say I would just kind of, I don't know that it's a one-liner, but man, just, always, I think in this deal, like be mindful of what God's will and God's plan is for you, because it ain't always going to be the same as yours, and also to find something somewhere to get happiness other than in that rodeo arena. Or it's not, even if it's good right now, it ain't going to end well, because sooner or later you can't go out there anymore. And there's a lot of great stuff in the world, and rodeo's a pretty small portion of it, and it don't always seem that way. It can definitely seem bigger and more important than it is, but enjoy the ride and don't take it too seriously. And I think in this deal, as long as you give it everything you got every time, you don't have anything to hang your head about when you're done. You know what I mean? Because end of the day, we all have it planned out how we want it to end, but it's a dangerous physical sport. So whether you really believe it or not, every time you go out there and nod your head could be the last time, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to die. But I mean, things can change in the blink of an eye. So definitely don't take it for granted, and find something somewhere else to get your joy.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that. It's on my mind just because I'm going to see him this evening. But I got a friend. He's not doing well from cancer. And we're kind of to the point where each time we talk, we say goodbye.
Yeah.
And like last night, I was texting him about when I'm going to see him this evening, and we said goodbye because he's like, "Hey, in case." Anyway, the last time he was here, he said, "I'm to the point where I'm not buying green bananas anymore." And I don't know why. He wasn't even trying to be funny.
No, but it's
that hit me so hard, like and especially like, obviously it's different if the end is that near, but the
point of the matter is that none of us know, right? Like someone told him that and can show him probably on paper where it's highly likely that it's going to happen. So I mean, he definitely has a different look at it than you or I. But I mean, it says it right there in the good book. Ain't none of us promise tomorrow, and if you don't believe it, you go talk to a guy like that.
No kidding. Yeah, it's made my days a lot different. And right now at this point, I'm sad that my friend, I'm also trying to be very cognizant of what maybe the Lord's trying to show me in all this.
Yep.
But I don't know, there's some type of life advice that one day I'll be able to condense that down into one line, but for now, I'm just trying to still figure it out. But I
think that was life advice, probably.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're out there buying green bananas on everything, you're probably betting on something you're not promised. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're betting on the come, and that's never a safe bet.
Yeah. Well, you guys check out HTE Drone Solutions.
Yep, htdronesolutions.com.
htdronesolutions.com. Follow Tilden Hooper. He's gone to 9 NFRs, finished 21 in the world this year.
I think so, yeah.
And golly, we're all betting for you on the 10th NFR, and hopefully that being the big one.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's
one.
Thanks for my intentions, and I'm excited to get rolling. Going to one tomorrow.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, my man. We're on to the next one. You guys watch out for Tilden. Pow, son.